So the number one excuse that I keep hearing every single time for Alabama fans, the media, every single time to try to give any excuse to why we have not played our best football recently is because this is a young football team, right? This is a young football team, right? We lost a lot of players to the NFL. We had we had one of the best draft classes, in the draft history. But if you really take a look at a deep dive into things, of course, one of those parts are true, right? If you look offensively, right? Look at the offensive side of the ball, you can make an argument for that, right? When you lose Landon Dickerson, when you lose Deontay Brown, when you lose Alex Leatherwood, right? You lose three of your top offensive linemen, and two of those guys were All-American players. One of them was an All-SEC player. That makes sense. You lose Devontae Smith, you lose Jalen Waddle, right? You lose two, not only preseason All-American players. You lose the Biletnikoff Award winner. You lose the Heisman Trophy winner, most importantly, in Devontae Smith, the best player in college football for that particular year. You lose him to the NFL. You also lose Mac Jones, who you can definitely make the argument was the best quarterback last year and ended up being a first-round pick going to the New England Patriots. So we did lose. We lost a lot. You can also look at the defensive side of the ball, and Christian Barmore was an All-American player that ended up being a second-round pick and a very impactful player so far for the New England Patriots. And then Patrick Surtain ended up being a top 10 NFL draft pick and arguably the best cornerback in college football. So, yeah, when I read those names, you can definitely take a look at it and say, well, yeah, we have a very, very young football team. We have a very inexperienced football team. And losing that many great players in one draft can definitely hurt the team. But when you actually take a look at the flip side, and when you really take a big breakdown to this roster, this is not that young of a football team. This is not like 2017 where we did lose a lot of NFL players, but we're forced into positions where we had to play a lot of true freshman players. A lot of the players that had to replace the guys like the Devontae Smiths of the world, the Patrick Surtains of the world, including on the offensive line with the names I just listed, these were guys that played before. These are guys that had extensive experience. These are guys that were more rotational, more reserved players. But even when you take a look at, and I'll just give you a perfect example, you look at the defensive side of the ball, we talked about during the preseason, and it wasn't just myself, this was the Alabama media. These were fans all preseason long that talked about this is going to be the best defense in the Nick Saban era. So where did we go from this is going to be the best defense in the Nick Saban era to now this is an inexperienced football team. They're young. They're still learning. Where did that go? Now, there's a reason why in the preseason we talked about why this could be the best defensive team we've ever seen during the Nick Saban era, because you had 10 to 11 players that had a lot of playing time experience. They were either starters or they were reserve players for the Alabama Crimson Tide defense last year, which again took a lot of heat, took a lot of criticism, Pete Golding especially, during the first three games until they had to turn around during the Georgia game. And ever since then, Bama's defense kind of took off. And you expected that momentum to carry over towards the 2021 football season. So where did that go? Where did this is going to be the greatest defense of all time, where did that all go to now we're inexperienced? Because when I take a look at this roster, I look at players like Phidarian Mathis. I look at players like Christopher Allen, who we all know he hurt himself. We all know he hurt himself, but you still had Will Anderson. You still had Byron Young. You still had Justin Igbokwe. You still had DJ Dale. You still had Timothy Smith. You still had Brian Branch. You still had Malachi Moore and Josh Jobe, who everyone expected him to be the best All-American corner because of Pro Football Focus having him graded as the number one cornerback coming into the 2021 season. So Jordan Battle, Daniel Wright, DeMarco Hellams, Christian Harris, and then you even brought a transfer like Henry To'oTo'o, who had a lot of playing time experience during his first couple years at the University of Tennessee. So you look at all that playing experience, all that talent, including the likes of Shane Lee, who was a starter back in 2019 under Pete Golding's defense. You had a lot of starting talent, a lot of guys that were more rotational players, but still had a lot of playing experience. Yet, somehow, in some way, we're now saying to ourselves, this is a young, very inexperienced team. You can even flip it to the offensive side of the ball. Emil Ekiyor was an all-SEC guard. He was an all-SEC guard. And now everyone's saying, well, no, he's young. He's still growing as a football player. Chris Owens is another. Chris Owens can be exempt because that's a guy that got out of his natural position at right tackle, at center, now has to flip to right tackle. But even you had some playing experience from Darren Dalcourt. Evan Neal was an All-American. Javon Cohen had some playing experience, right? You look at our outside receivers. John Mechie had a lot of playing experience, especially last year as a big impact player. Trayshawn Holden is a junior. Javon Baker is a redshirt sophomore. Is a redshirt sophomore, right? It's not like we're starting I.G. Hall, JoJo Earl, and and Christian Larry on the outside, and Ja'Cory Brooks as our outside receivers. No, you have a lot of guys like Slade Bolden. You bring in a transfer like Jameson Williams, who is balling right now. But still, you have a lot of guys that were around that national championship room. They see exactly how, they saw it firsthand how to be how to be a national champion. And a lot of those players on that particular team played. So when I look at Alabama's struggles from this particular year compared to what we were last year, it's not what we're doing on the field when it comes to physicality. It's about the mentality of this football team. When I look at Nick Saban making a press conference, literally seems like on a weekly occurrence, that we're kind of struggling in practice as far as getting our mentality right. As far as getting that side of the ball, down packed. That's an issue. That's a big problem for this particular team because, again, it's a lot of leadership, right? Of course, we had some inexperience in certain positions, but you would expect some of these players to step up in specific roles for leadership, for that leadership position role. And we've just not seen it all week round. Even leading up to the Arkansas game, we are not seeing it. Nick Saban still complains that we have a lot of selfish me players. So we need to stop saying that this is an inexperienced team, especially when we're this late into the season. Because at this point, we're just making an excuse to why Alabama potentially won't go to Atlanta, won't beat Georgia, and why we won't potentially make it to a national championship run. We just need to call a spade, and that's particularly about it. I'm sick and tired of the media and our fans saying that this is a young football team. This team has a lot of experience, has a lot of players that were around that leadership for last year's football team. You're telling me that none of those players can step up in specific roles to be a leader? I mean, that's just that's a problem that not only goes to this year, but it can extend towards the future. Because if you don't have those players step up in leadership positions, that is going to carry on for 2022. That can carry on to 2023, and that can carry on to 2024. That's something that has ended dynasties, potential dynasties, is the lack of leadership, not just your ability to perform well on the football field. Because Alabama has got that talent. They've gotten that aspect down, but it seems so far we have struggled with one particular area. We've struggled with one particular area so far, and that is having that mentality, having that establishing a hierarchy, establishing that leadership in order for us to perform to the best of our abilities. And can it something that we can get back? Absolutely. It's something that we can do it, but we need players to step up in specific roles. I think we should have a conversation about that, not having a conversation saying that this is a young, inexperienced football team, because if you really take a look at it, again, we have some inexperience in certain areas, but it's not like 2017 where we had literally 9 freshmen play for that particular year. Our freshmen for the 2021 class are barely even getting playing time. They're struggling to get playing time to a point where me and other Bama creators, content creators, including the media, have to make videos and write articles, begging Nick Saban to play some of his freshmen. So we have a different. We should probably talk about a different discussion about the mentality and the leadership of this team, not talk about the wrong things, because we're just giving excuses at this point to why Bama's not playing well. We just need to call a spade a spade and just tell her how it is.